To be the best, you have to fight for the best. And to fight for the best, you have to know who is the best. My name is Kit. This is Americans Learn. And today, we're returning back to Historia Militum, the story of Caesar's best legion, the full history of the 10th Legion. No, HBO's Rome got it wrong. It wasn't the 13th Legion, it was the 10th Legion. That was Caesar's favorite legion. The 10th Legion was the bull. The Papal Bull, well, not the Papal Bull, but nonetheless, it is the 10th Legion, the greatest of the legions. And in order for us to fully understand this video, the one thing I expect all of you true Romans to do is, that's right, please support the original content creator. The original link to this video is in the description box below. It's the right thing to do. It's the one thing to do. So let's get ready to enjoy this video like true Romans should. So, grab some true Roman wine, eat some true Roman bread, and make love to your true Roman wife. And let's enjoy this video in a 3, a 2, and an uno. Oops, hold on. Didn't even pull up the screen yet. There we go.
In the spring of 61 BC, a 38-year-old Roman general finds himself on the way to his newly appointed province of Baetica in Hispania. He was now to become its governor. He is met there by 2 veteran legions and its staff officers. He then prepares them to aid Pompey in his struggles against the Gallia and Lusitani tribes of northern Spain. However, he does one more thing that shocked his subordinates. He immediately orders another legion to be levied. This sudden and unexpected act is just one of the many this man was going to make throughout his long career, for the general's name was Julius Caesar, and the legion he was about to levy would be known as the 10th. The legion was to fight on land, on sea, even on horseback, at times outnumbered, outpositioned, outsupplied, but would always prevail regardless. In this video, I will go over the life of this legion from birth to its unfortunate end.
No!
If there was one example I had to make of a deeply emotional relationship between a general and a military unit, this would be it. Julius Caesar and his famous 10th Legion. Together, they would make a name for each other. Julius Caesar would be known as one of the greatest generals to ever live, and the 10th Legion would be known as one of the most successful, impactful, and famous legions in all of Rome's history. Some sources even claim it to be world famous at its time, known and feared by many of the Republic's enemies. The men of the 10th were to become some of the most professional, trained killers of their time, setting an example of what true loyalty, skill, and discipline
Look at those beautiful Romans, saving the world and saving our glorious republic, soon to be empire.
looked like to any standing military force to this day, and a staple to proper Roman training. It all started with the recruitment of young Spanish men who were picked by their physical potential and various talents. Caesar expressed a personal interest in picking the legion's centurions and tribunes, the legion staff officers. He was even said to have handpicked them all. For the centurions, of which there were 60 in the legion, the majority were taken from the 2 veteran legions that he already had, the 9th and 8th, and were chosen based on age, skill, and ability to instill heavy discipline. The tribunes, of which there were
Titus Pullo, back in formation.
6 were young noble teenagers who Caesar would have picked based on their tactical and intellectual potential, as he was known to be a very good judge of people and could spot talent when he saw it. The 10th Legion soon numbered around 6,000 men, and as you can tell, Caesar already had a rather emotional attachment to it and would have trusted all of its staff officers, probably even knowing all of them by name. The young men of the 10th were soon tested in the long conflict in northern Hispania, where long marches, rigorous training, and sudden violent engagements with the locals made them somewhat battle-hardened. After many raids and conquered land, Hispania was at peace for now. According to Plutarch, Caesar made his 3 legions very rich from the campaigns, and they would express much admiration for him, even saluting him as imperator. Caesar now had to return to Rome for his consulship, which he acquired in 59 BC. He was given the province of Cisalpine Gaul, which already had the 7th Legion present in it. It was also raised in Spain. He soon personally called for the 10th Legion, along with the 8th and 9th, to reunite with him in modern-day Venice, which was at that time part of his province. What happened next were the famous Gallic Wars. The first
Yeah, that's right, Gaul. We're gonna get you back for what you did to Rome.
Gauls that the 10th faced in battle were the Helvetii, who came down from the Alps numbering a few 100,000, counting women and children, and demanded the Romans let them through their lands. The conflict
How dare they? Shame on them.
conflict ended in a Roman victory, despite being inferior in number. Immediately after this, Caesar gets word from his Gallic allies that the German king Ariovistus crossed the Rhine and massacred them in battle, killing most of their nobility. Caesar marched towards the king, occupying a well-defended Gallic city not far away from him, and asked him to meet. It was within this city that Caesar started to hear disturbing rumors from his men. Some of them didn't want to face the Germans in battle, and others spoke of even turning back. See, the Germans were a very fierce nation, feared
Germania. Germania. I'll curse that name till the day I die. I'm kidding.
even by the Gauls. They stood a head taller than the average Roman, and on top of all this, outnumbered them. Caesar was faced with a very difficult situation. Nevertheless, he dealt with it perfectly, a side effect to his genius. He rounded up all the centurions and his 3 legions to a meeting. There, he told them up front that he was aware of the rumors, but they didn't bother him at all. If any of them did not want to stand and fight by him, they were free to leave and deal with the consequences of the law on their own. And even if most of his army deserted him, he would still march against Ariovistus, even if it meant he only had the 10th Legion, who he was sure would not abandon him due to cowardice and treason as the others, and that they were to be his Praetorian cohorts, meaning the most loyal bodyguards. This was perhaps the first time Caesar publicly favored the 10th Legion over the rest, and it would not be the last. This speech encouraged the greatest amount of loyalty and pride from the men of the 10th, and they thanked him through their tribunes for his high opinion of them, and assured him that there was no doubt they wouldn't do all the things he expected.
That's right, trust the 10th Legion. If all the other legions want to go away, fine. But I trust the 10th Legion.
Of them. As for the men of the other 3 legions, they felt a great amount of guilt and shame, and also swore loyalty to Caesar, desperate to regain their honor in his eyes. Ariovistus soon replied to Caesar's proposal to meet, saying that he would only do so if both parties were escorted by only cavalry. Now, Caesar was faced with another issue. His only cavalry were allies from Gaul, many of whom were of questionable loyalty, and it wouldn't take them much effort to simply hand him over to the Germans. So Caesar had all of his few thousand Gallic cavalry dismount and hand their horses temporarily over to the whole 10th Legion to accompany him. As the whole legion mounted their horses, one of the men made a loud joking remark stating that Caesar was now better than his word. He promised to make them his Praetorian cohort, but now he was making them all equestrians, referring to the high nobility of Roman cavalry.
Pretty good. Hold on, we're rewinding that again. That's actually pretty good.
The whole 10th Legion to accompany him. As the whole legion mounted their horses, one of the men made a loud joking remark stating that Caesar was now better than his word. He promised to make them his Praetorian cohort, but now he was making them all equestrians, referring to the high nobility of Roman cavalry, who were wealthier and of a higher status than the common infantry. This joke perhaps made even Caesar smile, as he mentions it in his personal commentaries. It was from this moment until forever that the legion was to be formally given the title of 10th Equestris, the 10th Mounted Legion. Ariovistus and Caesar met face to face on an open plain, leaving their cavalry forces not too far behind them, and approached each other accompanied by only 10 horsemen. Negotiations quickly broke down, and the men engaged in a bit of a fight. Both parties soon returned to the armies and prepared for the Battle of Vosges. Caesar had the 10th Legion dismounted and put on his prized right flank and engaged. The Germans came at them with such force that they stopped them completely, even pushing back the Roman left and middle. The men of the 10th, however, standing right in front of their general, broke through the German left and sent them fleeing. The Gallic cavalry then supported the breaking Roman left, and soon the Germans were in full retreat, the 10th Equestris having played a crucial role in this battle. The next big battle,
Hail to Rome,
was at Sabis in 57 BC, when the Nervii ambushed the unsuspecting Romans who were building their forts. Labienus, one of Caesar's best tribunes,
why, Labienus, why would you betray us?
Also remember his name for later, ordered the veteran 10th and 9th on the left flank to countercharge. The 2 Spanish legions, together since their battles in northern Spain, charged so effectively that they broke the Gauls and chased them all across the river, filling it with their bodies. Labienus now noticed that the other 4 legions on the right were under heavy pressure by the Nervii, and he ordered the 10th Legion alone to countercharge them. Caesar too was with the other legions at this time, personally fighting with sword and shield in hand. Plutarch notes that the 10th Legion fought with inhuman courage that day, charging in and slaughtering many Gauls to rescue their general. The battle was a success, and the 10th Legion again played a crucial role. The 10th was involved in many more battles that pacified most of Gaul for the time being, but none of them were as intense as the three I had mentioned. There was now a somewhat temporary peace in Gaul, but Caesar had his eyes set on the mysterious island of Britain.
Britain or Britannia. I don't know. Can it be done? And maybe someday a beautiful wall will be built there too.
At that time, many believed it was a mere fairy tale, denying its very existence. Only some claimed to have sailed there and witnessed sightings of locals, and even traded with them. Just a year ago, Caesar became the first general to march across the River Rhine with the 10th Legion, being the first Roman to ever do so. Now, it was time to be the first one in Britain. He chose to take with him the 7th and the 10th Equestris, his currently best performing legions. Upon reaching Britain, the Romans found themselves being watched by the Briton tribes, who were armed and ready for combat. The terrain of the beach made it very hard for the ships to disembark. An order was given for the men to start jumping into the cold water and advancing towards the Britons, who were waiting with chariots, cavalry, and a lot of missiles. The men hesitated. No one wanted to be the first to jump, and they all stood there terrified, not sure if the invasion will even work. Maybe they were all just leaping to their deaths after all. It was then that the Aquilifer of the 10th Legion, the man who carried the prized eagle standard of the 10th Equestris, stood up. "Jump in, men," he said, "unless you want to surrender our eagle to the enemy. I, for one, will do my duty to my general and the Republic." Upon saying this, he jumped into the water. Thus, the first Roman to set foot on Britain was probably this man of the 10th. He was followed by hundreds of his legion soldiers, who immediately leapt, swam to the shore under immense missile fire, and began holding a shield wall. The Romans eventually pushed them back and took the beach. And the day that...
That's right! Hard times make strong men. Strong men make good times. Good times make weak men. Weak men create hard times.
that followed, the men fought off a huge British army, killing thousands. But the ship carrying the Roman cavalry did not make it to the island due to the storms, and without support or supplies, Romans had to board and sail back to the continent, with no success being made.
Don't worry, we'll be back.
But Caesar would launch another invasion the next year, this time with 5 legions, the 10th included, and 2,000 Gallic cavalry. But after a few victories, it would result in another stalemate, and the Romans would have to sail back not long after.
We'll be back.
Upon arriving back to Gaul, Caesar was faced with a big rebellion. A Gallic leader named Ambiorix rallied an army, slaughtered an entire legion, and had another one under siege. Caesar took just one legion, the 10th, and started burning down Gallic villages to divert the attention of those Gauls. This worked, and soon the whole Gallic force broke their siege and marched towards them. The 10th was just barely able to build a fort when the Gauls arrived and surrounded them on all sides. They demanded the surrender of Caesar and his famous 10th Legion.
No way.
But Caesar had other plans. In one swift order, the whole 10th Legion countercharged from all the gates of the fort, catching the Gauls completely by surprise. They were supported by Caesar's
That's right, surprise, jerks.
Gallic cavalry that broke down the walls of the unfinished fort and charged out when the Gauls least expected it. The charge was so effective that the numerically superior Gauls broke and fled. Caesar sent the cavalry to pursue them, cutting down many. In 53 BC, Vercingetorix revolted in the
Oh, this guy, Vercingetorix. That mustache-twirling loser.
fortified city of Gergovia, and many tribes that were previously unconfident in standing up to the Romans swarmed under Vercingetorix. This included every Gallic tribe except the Remi. They employed scorched earth tactics, which meant they burnt down their own Gallic villages so that the Romans could not forage for supplies. Caesar's legions, the 10th included, were soon to run out of supplies. There was one city that the Gauls begged Vercingetorix not to burn, Avaricum, a huge old city surrounded by towering mountains on all sides but one. It had large, tall walls and was heavily fortified and supplied. Vercingetorix strengthened it with another 10,000 men, but this was to be Caesar's next goal, and last chance of getting out of his terrible situation. Over the next few weeks, his legions, as well as the 10th, began the siege, cutting down full forests to construct a massive ramp and 2 siege towers. This was not easy, and the weather did not make it any easier. For days it rained heavily without end, turning the ground beneath them into mud. The men were also running out of supplies. Caesar notes that some of the men were building despite not eating for days, and the Gauls did not make it easy for them. But when he told every legion one by one that he would break the siege if they found their hunger too hard to bear, all of them, just like the 10th, told him not to. They told him they had served under him for years, never abandoning a task unfinished, and they would do so here as well, for the honor of the Roman people. Throughout the siege, the Gauls desperately tried to set fire to the construction, even digging tunnels under it and sinking it a few feet. But the Roman stubbornness proved too much. By the 25th day of the siege, the Romans erected a mound which was 330 feet broad and 80 feet high. The two siege towers were placed on this mound and were rolled towards the walls of Avaricum. Soon the Romans took the walls, killed the survivors, and were once again fully supplied.
Absolutely glorious. Burn the city.
This was an immense feat of engineering and stubbornness. The Gauls would have been more surprised and demoralized than ever. All their hard work and burning down their own villages did not pay off. But the Gallic opposition was not over yet. There was one more major battle that the Romans had to face, and it would perhaps be the most difficult yet. Caesar had Vercingetorix and some 70,000 men cornered in a hilltop city of Alesia. Caesar was forced to surround it with 16 kilometers of wooden walls. He then created another wall around that wall to protect himself against the few 100,000 Gallic reinforcements on their way to rescue Vercingetorix from the siege. The 10th and the other legions were now trapped and forced to fight simultaneously on all directions, but eventually succeeded and Vercingetorix surrendered.
Bow to the glory of Rome, Vercingetorix. Do it now.
Ending the biggest Gallic uprising. Contrary to mainstream belief, this battle didn't pacify all Gaul. There were many that followed, but the 10th was not involved in them. They were instead put under Mark Antony's command, guarding other regions.
Oh, little troublemaker Mark Antony. I hope he doesn't get bewitched by some lady in Egypt.
For 2 more years. Only in 53 BC was Gaul truly at peace. Imagine the surprise of the 10th Legion when they heard one morning that Caesar, their favorite general, has marched against Rome with the 13th Legion, that they were now in a full-out civil war against Pompey, and that Caesar's second-in-command, Labienus, who had led the 10th many times in Gaul, such as at the ambush of the Nervii, now left him to join Pompey. I made a lot of great discoveries in my research about this next section of the Civil Wars, about the heroic deeds of some individuals in the 10th Legion, about the 10th's great rivalry with Pompey's elite 1st Legion, whom the 10th was to encounter in more than one battle, and about the Legion's final end. I felt it would be too
I don't want to hear about the Legion's final end.
overwhelming to add this all in a single video, so I decided to split it into 2 parts, and this second part of the 10th Legion's history is what really gave it its fame, and put all the skill they learned from the Gallic Wars to the test. I will be releasing the second part soon, so stay tuned if you're interested, and thanks for watching.
Oh, if you don't think we're not going to be watching that, beautiful people, you better believe it. Shout out to the 10th Legion. But you know what really hurts my soul? Knowing that they are eventually... You know what? We're not going to talk like that. We're going to talk about the glorious 10th Legion and how they were created by a bunch of patriotic, heroic citizens to form up a legion under the great Julius Caesar and save the world from Gallic invasions. I mean, after all, you have all those Gauls up there, and what are they doing? They're doing nothing but causing some trouble. I mean, name one thing that the Romans have done to provoke the actions of the people from Gaul or Germania. That's right, you can't name a single thing. Why? Because this is a true, unbiased, factually correct statement. There's be some history buff be like, you are horribly wrong, sir, and let me explain why. Listen. Also, by the way, I've been noticing in the comments section, people have been asking me if I'm sweeping. Well, okay, you might ask me that question, but are you being a true Roman? Are you ready to march with the 10th Legion? The next time, the first comment I see where somebody's asking me I'm sweeping, I'm going to ask you if you're a true Roman, and are you in the 10th Legion? All right, you better respond back. You better believe it, because we here at Americans Learn are true Romans, after all. So, if you guys want us to continue on with this series, you better type in the comment section below. But besides that, support the original content creator. It's the right thing to do. It's what a true Roman would do. And we'll watch part 2 next week. So you better hit that ring bell notification so you're made aware of it. Because after all, just because Rome is gone, it's right here in the heart, doesn't mean it's ever been forgotten. Got it? Good.